Hello, everyone, and happy Monday. Today, we are continuing with our author study, and we will be comparing the elements of multiple stories. Now, think back to the Patricia Polacco books we've read so far: My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother, The Keeping Quilt, Thunder Cake, and today we read Some Birthday. All of these books are by Patricia Polacco. Remember last week we talked about how an author gets ideas for her books by things that have happened in her own life. So keep thinking about that. We're going to use our comparing skills to compare what's the same with these three books. Just think, if these are stories from her real life, sometimes the characters or the setting might overlap. Now, look back at this chart. You've seen this before, but I want you to lean in and show me those big eyes. On the left here, we have compare. When we compare something, we find what is the same. When we contrast, we find what is different. So we have our words here for comparing and our sentence frames, and also the same for contrast. Now we're going to compare the characters, the settings, and the themes of these three books. I know you know what characters are, and by now you should know what a setting is. The setting is where the story takes place. But what is a theme? That might be a new word for you. Theme. A theme is the topic or the message in the story. It's what the author wants to share with us. Okay, so now we're going to compare characters in all three books. I think back to My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother, and I think through, who are the characters in that book? Well, I know Babushka's in that book, and I know Patricia's in that book, and I know Richie is in that book. Then I think about The Keeping Quilt. Babushka's in that book, and her mom, and her daughter, and Patricia. Now, I've already noticed two people overlapping. Let's see if it's the same for Thunder Cake. In Thunder Cake, characters are Babushka and Patricia. Oh, I noticed that in all three books, Babushka is one of the main characters. Remember, that's Patricia's grandmother. And Patricia is in all three of those books. In My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother, she went by Trish, but that's short for Patricia. So in all of the books, when I find what's the same about all three, I'm comparing. And when I compare the characters, I see that in all three books, Babushka and Patricia are main characters. Now we're going to do it for the setting. So before we move on, think about it. Think about the setting of My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother. Where did that story take place? You might have already forgotten. It's a state that starts with an M. Think about The Keeping Quilt. Think about where they start. And then they move. They move from Russia and they move to New York. And then from there, they end up where? Once again, it's a state that starts with an M. And last, Thunder Cake. Thunder Cake takes place on a farm in that same place. Do you know where it is? The story takes place in Michigan. If you got that, give me a silent cheer. Now, I was very specific on The Keeping Quilt. I said just part of this story takes place in Michigan because they start the story off in Russia and then they move to New York and they end the story in Michigan. They're not super explicit when they share that with us, but if you're really thinking about the settings, you would be able to realize that. And then in My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother and in Thunder Cake, we know the story takes place in Michigan. Okay. Oh, I don't want to give you the answer yet. So now we're going to compare themes. Remember, the theme is what we can learn from the story. It's our message, or sometimes it's a topic. So I think about all three of these stories and what I could learn from them. In each one, I feel like we learn a lesson that Patricia learned from her grandmother. And so I think about all three of them. Does anyone have an idea of what it might be? What is the theme, the overlapping theme of all three of the stories? Let's see. I said the theme of My Rotten Red-Headed Older Brother is that our siblings are there for us even though we bicker. Do you remember that? When Richie got on Patricia's nerves and they had competitions all the time. But in the end, it showed us that he really was there for her and he loved her a lot. In the Keeping Quilt, the whole story is about family traditions. And so it taught me that family traditions are worth keeping. And in Thundercake, I learned that family can help you to have courage to overcome your fears. Now, in all three of these books, there's something that overlaps. Do you see or notice what it is? That's right, family values. So, in all three of these books, I learned that family is very important. That is the theme. So, we look back at this again. And if we want to compare or contrast these books in a full sentence, we might go in and use one of these sentence frames. So right now, today we've been comparing. And so I want to read through these sentence frames and see, is there a sentence I can write? And I'm going to read through them in both texts. Well, I'm comparing three. Another way they are the same is blank. One similarity between this book is and this book is blank. The blank in the text is the same because, let's see, I would like to use one of our sentence frames. The one I picked was the blank in the text is the same because blank. And it gave me some options here. And so in this blank, I put the word theme. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to compare the theme here. Right here, I know all three books talked about family values. So let's see if we can put a sentence together. The theme in all three texts, notice I was very specific and I told you all three. You could even go in and put the titles if you wanted. The theme in all three texts are the same because they all connect to the importance of family. Okay, so we even pulled one of our sentence frames and wrote a sentence using our comparison. Great job, friends. We're going to continue this skill this week. Have a great day.